Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast with Cyril Gerald-Quinn on this 5th of January 2021. Still getting used to saying that. Happy New Year to everybody out there. To my sports audience, this is the first sports podcast we've done of the year. Of course, we did The Wire this weekend on Saturday with Rob Sapp. I definitely would check out that episode, Soft Eyes, the Wire remix. Through 2 episodes through season 4, already reminded of why that is the greatest season in the history of television. Without question, certainly check that out. We'll be coming out with a new episode. We still haven't decided yet. Both our teams are in the playoffs, so it's not going to be happening Saturday, as the Washington football team and Buffalo are playing on Saturday. But it'll be out. It will be out next week. So keep your eyes on that. Again, Happy New Year to everybody out there. Hope everybody out there is being safe. As of right now, I checked. It looked like Osloff and Warnock had a pretty decent lead with 55% of the proceedings in as far as this Georgia runoff. So we know it's going to determine the Senate, and the fireworks are just beginning from the standpoint of Trump's finale. He's going out with a bang, as we all know, in regards to January 20th. So this is just the beginning of that from that standpoint. So certainly keep your eyes on that. In terms of the sports, we have a lot to cover on this program. COVID still running rampant. Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, who just made their first playoff appearance since 2002 in 19 years. He's out amongst 5 Cleveland Browns, 2 of them being players. The others, people within the organization, a couple of people within the organization test positive for COVID. So that is, a big blow, certainly for the Browns. Having your head coach out, who knows? He certainly is not going. I mean, he won't be at the stadium, but I'm sure there's a way that they will, get that he will, certainly be a part of the game plan and things of that nature. But he will not be coaching as they face Pittsburgh on Sunday night, which will be I believe, the last game of a busy playoff weekend, NFL playoff weekend. We'll get to that later on in the program. Kevin Durant is going to be out at least 4 games starting tonight. So far, so far so good. The Nets are just, hammering the Utah Jazz up by 21. Last time I checked, Kyrie Irving was having a big night. But he's going to be out at least 4 games on a 7-day quarantine. Now, he's tested negative for COVID. Remember, he had COVID earlier this year, back in May. Says, still has some of the antibodies and that, has no ill effects from it, according to him. But, the thing that's going to get people that in sports as well as, just in society is this close contact, especially within the NFL, within the world of professional sports, this close contact. If there's any close contact, you are susceptible for immediate quarantine. The NBA is not playing any games with it. He's 7-day quarantine despite testing negative. Now, if I were Kevin Durant, I would feel some type of way because you saw James Harden was in the club basically, for the better part of a couple of weeks all over the country. He's in Atlanta and Vegas. And now I know he did the 6 negative tests, but he missed no games, and the one game he did miss was postponed. So this is almost like a punishment for Durant. And again, he's going to get paid, but in a 72-game season on a team that trying to develop some chemistry, Brooklyn struggling with their defense, not a ideal time. You'd rather have this now than in May or come around the playoffs, of course. But still, I would, if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm kind of annoyed right now, considering the fact that I tested negative. But the NBA is not going to mess around with this. They're going to definitely take a more stricter approach, and certainly a more organized approach than the NFL. So I think the NBA will be consistent with its legislation in regards to COVID. Of course, you have 6 NFL coaching vacancies, and I'm gonna tell you right now, there are some excellent in looking at the landscape, there are some excellent quarterbacking opportunities for a future coach. The number one job that I would want on this list to me is the Houston job, because right now they have out of this group, they have the best quarterback in my mind as far as youth, as far as potential in Deshaun Watson. That to me is the number one job. The number one job, if I were a coach, if I were a prospective coach, would take. Of course, Jacksonville will have the number one pick with Trevor. They'll get Trevor Lawrence. Uh, the Chargers situation is great as well with Justin Herbert. We know what type of player he is. Couple question marks in regards to quarterbacking with Atlanta and Detroit Widows. They have two veteran quarterbacks who came from the class of 2008 and 2010 or 2000. Yeah, I think Ryan was in that 2008 class with Joe Flacco, and 2010 with Stafford. 2009, 2010 with Stafford, but they've been around for a while now, and they're at the points in their careers where both of those guys could be on the move from those respective teams. So those jobs are not as appealing, to say the least. And of course, you have the Jets, who they're just the Jets. I would not touch that job if I had other options. To be honest with you, it's just they're one of the worst franchises in all of sports, let alone the NFL. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. There are also a number of these general manager jobs that are up for grabs as well. Carolina has a spot. Houston, Atlanta. So a couple, as always, there are a number of jobs that are open. Eric Bieniemy absolutely should receive a head coaching job. Like I don't want to hear about from the NFL about all these committees they're creating for persons of colors and equity. Just hire African American coaches. It's pretty much that simple. Just hire them. African American head coaches. Eric Bieniemy absolutely deserves a head coaching job. He should have one last year or maybe even the year before. But in 2021, there's no two ways about it that Eric Bieniemy should have one of these jobs, considering what he's been a part of with the Kansas City offense and over the last couple of years since he's been the offensive coordinator. Devontae Smith is your Heisman Trophy winner. He's the first wide receiver from Alabama. Of course, he's from Alabama. Will be part of that high-powered, machine Alabama has on offense. He beat out Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Trask, and of course, and his own teammate Mac Jones to win the Heisman Award. First receiver since 1991, 29 years. Of course, that's going way back to Desmond Howard, back when he was starting at Michigan. Listen, this guy is not. It's going to be very interesting watching him in the NFL. He's not a freak of nature. He's not even the best receiver I've seen come out of Alabama. To be honest with you, I wouldn't put him on par. I don't think he's as good as Julio Jones or even a Calvin Ridley. But the guy just knows how to get open. He's just a supreme technician as far as route running, and he's projected to be a first round pick, a upper first round pick, somewhere in that 6 to 16 range. In the upcoming NFL draft. So it seemed like there was some momentum picking up. There was a lot of momentum picking up over the past couple of weeks. So I'm not surprised in the least bit that he wins it, despite how rare it is that a wide receiver does win this award. Remember, this has been a quarterback award, similar to the NFL MVP. This has been a quarterback dominated award. And when a quarterback hasn't won it, you've seen it go to mainly running backs. So there are the headlines for today, January 5th, 2021 on the Real Deal podcast. We're going to get, of course, the NBA is 2 weeks into the season. And you had I think with the NBA right now, you have to be patient with the players and with the product on the floor with the considering the quick turnaround. Couple of guys have gotten off to slow starts relatively. Anthony Davis is one of them, but of course not worried about him as long as he's healthy. But a big night for superstars last night in terms of the Greek Freak, Luka Doncic, and of course Jason Tatum. All of them. Luka goes for a 33-point triple-double. You had the Greek Freak with 43 and 9, and Tatum drops a 40-piece on Detroit. Just kind of a reminder. Not on Detroit, on Toronto. Kind of a reminder that, he is still the guy on that Boston Celtics team, as he has been thoroughly outplayed by one Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has been the best Celtic this year, no two ways about it. But again, a huge night for superstars, and I expect this kind of trend to move forward as the season goes along, and as these guys get more reps and get their conditioning back to get their conditioning back to normal in this condensed season. Already been a peculiar season, to say the least, with kind of like these baseball type series where a team goes in and spends basically 4 days in the city and plays two games, plays the same team twice. For the most part, those teams have split the series as you kind of would expect it. But again, I've been all in on the NBA so far. Number of storylines developing in both conferences, and of course the elephant in the room or around the league is still where James Harden will end up. He's going to be traded. It's just a matter of to who and a matter of when he will be traded. So even though he's going out there, he's performed well, even though they took a loss last night to Dallas by 13. But Harden's going to be moved. It's going to be a matter of where to. Couple of things that have stood out as far as we knew that Phoenix was going to be improved. We knew that Brooklyn was going to be in title contention. So those two things are not surprising, even though Brooklyn coming tonight is 3-4. As long as Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are healthy, that team will be fine. They need to just get their defense together. If I were them, I still would try to go after James Harden. But again, the loss of Spencer Dinwiddie is a big loss in terms of as a trade asset, and that's and somebody on that team. But more importantly, as a trade asset for James Harden, that's that's a major blow to to them possibly trading for James Harden. The Sixers got off to a nice start. Their only loss coming when Joel Embiid was injured, or was not had a major injury, but mainly sitting him out for precautionary reasons. But they played great as of yet, as of now, going 5-1. Lakers, kind of been on cruise control at 5-2. So, you gotta let things play out with the NBA this season. More, you're gonna see some strange things with the scheduling. Guys trying to get back in shape, getting back in shape. But I still think the product, for the most part, in games that I've watched, the product has been the level of play has been relatively high, has still been relatively high for the most part. Of course, last night or Sunday night, you had one Steph Curry, just kind of a little, not a subtle, but a very blatant reminder of I'm still the best point guard in the league, and even though we are not title contenders, we will be in the mix for the playoffs. Just kind of reminding you that Golden State got off to an 0-2 start, got destroyed their first two games, and people just wanted to jump off bridges in terms of, oh, Golden State and Steph Curry, I don't know, and so on and so on. Instead of letting things kind of play out and remembering that this team, they have a bunch of moving pieces. They had no Draymond Green for the first part of the season. He's back now, and his impact has been certainly felt. And Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. 62 points on 31 shots. I saw the game as during the commercial breaks of the Washington Philadelphia game, of course. But I saw his performance, and again, if Steph Curry's healthy, then this is what you expect out of Steph Curry. Like people pretend like last season he was not healthy. He broke his hand. He missed basically the majority, almost the entire season. It's not like Steph Curry had a year last year where he played in 80 games and he averaged 16 points a game and shot 30% from the field. Not like he had a horrible season, and that would have been cause for concern. Like he comes in last season, it was healthy, played like shit. Then you're like, oh, what is he aging? 31 years old, maybe, point guards don't last for, don't especially start aging quicker than other positions. But he was hurt last year. I mean, he was injured. Like, so again, he is still one of the most dangerous players in the sport as far as trying to defend, as far as what you have to do in order to, as far as his impact on the game, even when he's not, even when he doesn't have the ball. Even when he doesn't have the ball. Now, again, that roster is just not very good. I like Wiseman. Draymond Green is a shell of what he once was. Let's be honest about that. They have one All-Star. They have one All-Star, and that's Steph Curry. But they do have what they do have is they have some scrappy players, some guys that are going to follow Steph Curry, some guys that should improve as the season moves along. But there is not that roster is not very good. That roster is, it's a non-playoff roster, to be honest with you. But because if Steph Curry is healthy, they will be in the mix for definitely a top 8 seed, and without question will be amongst the contenders for that 7 to 10 slot in terms of the play-in seeding. The play-in games that are going to happen transpire at the end of the season. There's no two ways about it. He's just that dynamic of a player, and his presence. What you saw on Sunday should not be surprising in the least bit. And he followed it up last night with a 30 piece. So he scores 92 points in 2 games. I expect. Here's what I need out of Steph Curry. If I'm Steve Kerr, I'm having a conversation with Steph Curry. Like, look, we need you to be selfish. We need you to. We want you. Matter of fact, you should lead the league in shot attempts and lead the league in scoring. Like, we want you to lead the league. We want you to lead the league in scoring. This is similar to like 05, 06, when the team with the Lakers and of course the late great Kobe Bryant, Phil Jackson kind of pulled him aside for the season. Not that Kobe needed any extra motivation. Say, hey, we know you like to shoot, but this season we want you to shoot even that much more. And it basically was like, say less in terms of the message being sent to Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant went out there that year and averaged 35 points a game. So he did not need any. That's all that's all you need to hear. And he did that just to get that team to the playoffs. That was an awful roster, to say the least. That Smush Parker and what have you. Some Lamar Odom was okay at that point, but he wasn't the Lamar Odom that we saw in those Laker championship years. That roster was Luke Walton. That roster was a Kwame Brown. I was on that team. If you remember, there was not that was not a memorable Laker team in 05, 06, but Kobe did what Kobe did and led them to a 7th seed, of course, where they will lose to the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs. But Steph Curry has to have that type of season where, he's going to have, and I think he will. I think he's going to have a bunch of 40-point games. I think that he is tired of all the talk of not being mentioned amongst the best players in the league. I think you're going to see a Steph Curry revenge tour that's not going to lead to a championship because the team is just not good enough, but it will lead to at least, I think, a playoff appearance. But overall, the NBA product, I feel like, has been very good. Has been very good. So a number of excellent matchups, night in and night out. A little something going on with Phoenix and the Clippers. Everybody coming at Paul George, and rightfully so. I mean, Paul George, this perception of him being soft in the playoffs, and he is soft in the playoffs. So teams are going to come after him until he does something in the playoffs. I'm not saying winning a championship, but until he dominates in the playoffs, yeah, guys are going to come after him. And I love what Devin Booker did, because you got to understand, Devin Booker is the young pup. Okay, you're the young pup. You want to start. Devin Booker wants to be an all-star. He's on a team that should make the playoffs. I think Phoenix should make the playoffs this year and will make the playoffs. He wants to win. He wants to win. So this is all. This is competition. This is Devin Booker saying, "I'm here now. I don't care how many all-star appearances you have. I don't care about the fact that you're playing for a team that's considered a championship contender in the Clippers. We are here in the Western Conference, and we're not going anywhere." So I perfectly understand where Devin Booker was coming from in regards to that, what transpired with Phoenix and the Clippers last night. Again, it wasn't not a big deal. Nobody's fighting in 2021 in the NBA. Kind of thing that got lost in that game was, again, Phoenix just finds ways to blow not Phoenix, the Clippers just find ways to blow these leads. I mean, the Clippers, no lead is safe when the Clippers are playing. I mean, like it's been unbelievable. Even this year, even in their wins, some of their wins don't feel like wins with how many leads that they're blowing. I'm talking like 20, 25-point leads. Next thing you know, the team, next thing you know, they're only up by 5 or 6, and the game is a nip and tuck in the fourth quarter. So again, that is certainly psychological in regards to the Clippers and where they're at. I mean, they've blown, not blown, but they have come close to blowing a number of leads over the course of this season. So there you go with the NBA. Denver off to a slow start. I'm not really concerned about them. They have too much talent. They'll be fine. And of course, they certainly will be in the mix for the James Harden sweepstakes. I actually, watching Houston, I know Houston lost last night. I actually like Houston's team around James Harden. Now, again, Harden's going to be traded, but John Wall has come back, has played well this season, coming off, basically 2 years where he, didn't play at all. They have some nice pieces. The guy, Christian Wood has played like an all-star so far this year. He was averaging 25 and 10 last time I checked. Maybe those numbers have dropped a little bit, but not that. He's still averaging about 20 and 10. So I actually like Houston's team even more so than last year. But the problem is, Harden wants out. They're not going to be a title contender. But Harden still is going to want out. I want to hold off on giving a certain team some love because last night involved in a text conversation where apparently one of their players was playing as well as anybody. So I'm just going to hold off. I was going to give that team some love, but based on that text exchange, I'm going to hold off on giving them some love. I have to see more. I am encouraged. They do look like a professional team, a professional basketball team this year. I mean, I'm somewhat encouraged, but I'm just going to hold off until I see more. Of course, the NFL regular season completed. It's complete. They get in all 256 games, not without, of course, a wacky and just some insane scheduling with what they put some of these teams through, Pittsburgh and Baltimore to say the least. And it ended with fireworks. The Washington football team, congratulations to them, are headed to the playoffs for the first time since 2015 with a division title and a 7-9 record. But by the way, despite the 7-9 record, they still had a plus. They still were +6 in the point differential. So that's 7-9. If there's such thing as a decent 7-9, they're not a horrible 7-9. They're a decent 7-9. Okay, keep that in mind. But again, the big story, of course, is all the conversations about what transpired with Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he will be the head coach going into next year. He's not getting fired. And I'll explain more about that soon enough. About Peterson pulling Jalen Hurts out of the game when the game was still in the balance after 3 quarters and putting in Suddenfield. Let me get his name right. A guy who in Washington we know as basically a career backup and a guy that should never even see the light of day as a starting quarterback in the league. The guy he's not even a backup. He's a 3rd string quarterback, to be honest with you. So we know the Eagles knew all they needed to know about Suddenfield and whether or not he could play. That was not what this is all about. This was about them, of course, tanking for the number 6 draft pick versus the number 9 draft pick. And I think people are missing the forest from the trees here. You want to blame Doug Peterson all you want. You can blame him all you want. This was a organizational decision. This came from the top. Roseman, Laurie, this was not a Doug Peterson decision. Doug Peterson was following orders. This was like, the Few Good Men, remember the Code Red? Yeah, this just came from Jessup. Lieutenant Colonel Jessup. He was giving orders. And those soldiers followed orders in terms of, if you remember, A Few Good Men. That's all, and it's the only thing that happened here. And Doug Peterson, and I'll use another pop culture reference, like Irvin Burrell in The Wire, Commissioner Burrell, he took the hit. He took the hit and will continue to take the hit. He took one for the team, took one for the organization. Okay, Doug, you've had an awful year. We respect the fact that you won the Super Bowl, but we want a higher draft pick. You're going to take this hit if the game is close and if the game is even in if the game is in if the game's close. This is what's going to transpire in order for us to get this draft pick. Period. So this was not a Doug Peterson decision. This was an organizational decision. That's what everybody's missing. And I don't want to hear from the Giants, let alone listen. Joe Judge, coach your team. Don't work don't. The fact that you're depending on a 4-win team, a team that came into this game with 4 wins to get you to the playoffs, tells you all you need to know about the type of year you had. The Giants won 6 games this year. They were not a playoff team. Period. Don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear from Giant fans whining about not getting to the playoffs. You didn't deserve it. You won 6 games. You're telling me you're depending on a 4-win team to get you to the playoffs? Please, you can be in a position like Washington was the last 2 weeks and control your own destiny. It's just that simple. And how bad was this division? Washington could have clinched with a week to spare had they won last week with a losing record. Or with the at best if they won this week with the record, they could have been 500 had they won out. Had they won last week and this week. But still, it just tells you all you need to know about the NFC East this year, how historically horrible it was. But again, if you're Washington, you don't have to apologize at all. You take the division title, you take the playoff spot, and you take the home game. It's just that simple. You do not the Washington football team that does not have to apologize whatsoever for being in the playoffs. But as far as the Eagles are concerned, the big thing, the big story is the fact of how far this organization has fallen. This used to be a top organization as far as putting a winning product on the field, coaching, developing offensive and defensive lines, quarterback coaching, things of that nature. They've never been great in terms of draft. They've been good in terms of developing players, but they've never been great with their draft picks. They've been somewhere in the middle, but lately they've been terrible. They've been poor with drafting. But overall, this organization was a legit top 5 in that 5 to 10 range as far as model organizations in the NFL. And right now, they are in the bottom half of the league right now, the way that organization is being run. Period. But this was clearly a situation where Doug Peterson was told what to do and given his marching orders as far as, hey, this is what's going to happen. You're going to do this, and you're going to take the hit. And by the way, you'll keep your job for at least one more year. That's how it works. Listen, this happens in the military. It happens in corporate America. It happens it happens in a lot of facets of life that this happens. This is not unusual. Period. It's not unusual. So I think people were kind of missing. Again, we're missing the big picture here in regards to what was transpiring with Philadelphia. So the playoffs are here. The playoffs will be here. Of course, you have a historic NFL playoffs, a triple header on Saturday and Sunday with the wild card. Green Bay and Kansas City get the bye weeks. I think overall, I think there are 3 teams that can win the Super Bowl. Green Bay, Kansas City, and New Orleans. Green Bay's defense finished the season up relatively strong. They have the MVP of the league right now, a guy who was the best player in the league this year, in Aaron Rodgers, who just finished the year on a tear, 48 touchdowns to just 5 picks. easily the number one rated quarterback in the league. Kansas City didn't like the way they finished, but they still have the best player in the league in Mahomes, and they still have an offensive juggernaut. But again, not high on Kansas City right now. As far as winning the Super Bowl or getting to the Super Bowl, I'm not. To be honest with you, but again, it's hard. It'll be hard to go. They will be they'll be a tough out to say the least. And of course, New Orleans, um, who could have used that bye certainly to for Drew Brees and get some other players healthy. Watch the Michael Thomas dynamic. Had a very interesting conversation with one Rob Sapp about that, and you look at Michael Thomas's numbers with Drew Brees versus Taysom Hill, not even comparable. His numbers are dramatically better with Taysom Hill, a guy who is not a great thrower, versus the Hall of Fame quarterback. And you remember going back to all the things, all these the protesting in the summertime and those comments that Drew Brees made. There was some dissension in that locker room. Malcolm Jenkins came out, spoke out. People were ripping Drew Brees a new one. It seems like it's happened years ago, but this happened, back in, I believe it was July or August. 2020 was, it was like 3 years in one, but it happened in the summertime. And there, you know, it had there is a thought that Thomas is, that Drew Brees and Thomas are not on the same page. And they sit out Thomas. He's going to play in this game. But they sit him out the last couple of games with this ankle injury, which sounds great, but the bottom line is he was healthy when Taysom Hill was playing. Okay, so keep your eye on that dynamic. I don't expect that Michael Thomas will be back with the Saints next year. I'll say that right now. I don't expect I don't expect him to be back with the Saints next year. Looking at these matchups, I would say the best matchup probably is Baltimore, Tennessee. I don't like the way the Rams are playing right now offensively. I can't. That's a toss-up game, though. That game is a toss-up because their defense is devastating. And by the way, the Rams know how to play against Russell. No, they know how to defend Russell Wilson. So that game's a toss-up. Certainly got to like the Saints against Chicago. Certainly like the Saints against Chicago and Tampa against Washington. Though the one thing I'll say about that Tampa Washington game, the point spread is 7.5. Tampa Bay has not played well they beat up on a lot of bad teams. With the exception of Green Bay. Tampa Bay was 1-5 against playoff teams this year. With the exception of Green Bay. They lost to New Orleans twice, lost to Chicago, lost to Kansas City, and lost to the Rams. Close losses for the most part, with the exception of the second New Orleans game, which was just an avalanche. But it's not like Tampa Bay, people, when they were Tampa Bay's hot right now, playing better than they played all season. They beat Atlanta twice, Detroit, and Minnesota. Let's calm down. Like, it's not, they didn't go through a gauntlet of great teams down the stretch. But I don't put them on my list of teams I think that can win the Super Bowl. I don't like Pittsburgh right now either, though I expect Pittsburgh to advance, to take out Cleveland, even before the head coach was out due to COVID. But it's going to be, teams it's going to be very interesting watching the Bills and watching the Baltimore. A lot of people are high on Baltimore right now. They've gone back to just letting Lamar Jackson be Lamar Jackson, and their offense. They played well down the stretch. They picked it up defensively. So some people, you're going to see people picking Baltimore to get to the Super Bowl. Buffalo, I don't think Buffalo is ready for that level of play. But overall, we talk about Aaron Rodgers and the phenomenal year he's had. It will not be laid out. It won't be better. Aaron Rodgers will not have a better chance for the remainder of his career to get to a Super Bowl, to win another Super Bowl than he does have this year. They have home field advantage. Their offense has played great. The defense has picked it up. He's the MVP of the league. The the conference is not as strong as it once looked. The Rams are not. The Rams in Seattle are okay teams. I'm not completely so. I mean, Tampa Bay, that should be a revenge game, and Tampa Bay in their building should be an advantage for Green Bay if that matchup happens. And frankly, with the Saints are not the same team outdoors as far as in that dome. Let's be honest. Even with fans or no fans, everything is laid out for Green Bay to get to the Super Bowl this year. If you're Green Bay, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you have to get to the Super Bowl this year. You have to get to if it's going to either happen now or it's not going to happen. Remember, they've lost. Green Bay has lost a couple of these championship games. They've lost their last 3 NFC championship games at Seattle, at San Francisco, at Atlanta, and 2 of those games weren't even close. They got smoked in Atlanta and got smoked in San Francisco. The common denominator to that was all those games are on the road. They have everything. They have home field advantage throughout, even with minimum fans to no fans. That is still something. It's still going to take a lot to come to that stadium, Lambeau Field, and beat that team. And again, to me, I'm looking at Green Bay. It is now or never for the Packers. Like Kansas City could not. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes is 25 years old. They're going to be around for a while. Who knows how many years with Green Bay has at this level. But give Matt LaFleur credit. Back-to-back 13-3 seasons. And Mike McCarthy looks worse and worse each year, each game. Mike McCarthy looks worse and we see whose fault it was in regards to how that fell apart in Green Bay. So I'm definitely looking forward to the playoffs. Again, you will have a triple header. Hopefully, COVID does not have a major impact on who wins or gets to the Super Bowl. I don't want to see a Super Bowl with dare I say, Washington and Indianapolis. So a couple of teams that have I don't want to see a Super Bowl with teams that have no business being there. So I could live Buffalo, Green Bay, Kansas. Of course, everybody. I want to see Green Bay and Kansas City. You can live in Baltimore, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Pittsburgh. You can live with with most of the matchups. But you just don't want to see a team that doesn't have a business being there. In regards to college football, of course, the season will wrap up with the national championship a week from yesterday, in terms of January 11th. Alabama, Ohio State, 2 of the most storied programs in the history of college football. And, the 2 teams that were supposed to be there, to be honest with you. I want to go back. You look at those games, and I thought Alabama would steamroll Notre Dame, which what I expected and which happened. In regards to Clemson, Ohio State, I thought that was a toss-up, but I'm not surprised that Ohio State won that game. In terms of the losers in those games, Notre Dame and Clemson, to me, those games were decided before even kickoff. And I'm going to start from Notre Dame. Start with Notre Dame first. Notre Dame and Brian Kelly are just happy to be in the playoffs or just happy to be playing a New Year's Day bowl. In terms of winning or beating Alabama or beating Clemson or beating some of these upper echelon teams, to me, the mentality seems like they could care less. At a certain point, you want to go to one of these games and be competitive. I mean, Notre Dame has gotten blasted, and I saw something this was going back since 2000. This has been going on for like 20 years. Notre Dame has gotten destroyed in these games in New Year's Day and BCS and these playoff games. And I hear Brian Kelly talk about how great Alabama is, and look at the scores of their games, and you want to create this narrative where Notre Dame can't win the big one. Well, the narrative is true. You run up against these teams, Southeastern Conference, ACC, up on New Year's Day, and you get blasted every year. I mean, I'd rather saw Texas A&M, to be honest with you. So even though Notre Dame deserved to be there, the result was inevitable, and again they didn't look like they belonged on the same field as Alabama. That game wasn't even close to the score indicated. As far as Clemson and Ohio State goes, I have never been more pleased watching a team get their ass kicked in college football than I was Clemson. Clemson deserved this. They had this coming. Dabo Swinney, having Ohio State ranked 11th, and then not even backing off of it at the end of the game after you gotten destroyed by Ohio State. It was a clear revenge game for Ohio State. Ohio State has been handled by Clemson the last couple of years in these playoff games. You remember that 2016, 31-0 embarrassment. And then, of course, last year, 29-23, a game that Ohio State could have won. That Clemson's defense had a game-clinching interception to seal that game. So I give Ohio State a lot of credit. The quarterback Fields was tremendous in this game. They did whatever they wanted to against Clemson's defense. They dominated Clemson's defense like I've never seen anybody dominate Clemson's defense. I guess, you can go LSU last year. Oh, yeah, I guess you could say LSU. But outside those two performances, those two teams just manhandled Clemson all over the field. They had over, I think 639 yards of total offense. They just pushed Clemson all over the field. I don't even think Trevor Lawrence played poorly. I think he was getting his head knocked off with just the onslaught of the Ohio State pass rush. That was an angry Ohio State performance. It was an angry Ohio State performance. All the talk, all the talk by Dabo and just complete disrespect. I saw Nick Saban had Ohio State ranked 5th in his final poll, which was understandable. I mean, that's not had Texas. Of course, he's going to defend his own conference. Texas A&M finishes 9-1, and will probably finish in the top 5, top 4, to be honest with you, when the final poll is released. So that I was fine with that. But for Dabo Swinney to put Clemson, Texas A&M to put Ohio State 11th it was disrespectful, and they completely deserved the ass kicking that they received by the hands of Ohio State and Ryan Day. Should be a great national championship game. Get a slight edge to Alabama. Looks like one of these years where Alabama is just almost borderline, seems to be borderline unbeatable. But again, I will never doubt Ohio State in a big game as an underdog, especially. We saw it in 2014 when people count Ohio State out, they kind of rise to the occasion. They should be an underdog in this game, but not a significant underdog. I would even call it a borderline toss-up game. So looking forward to that national championship game on January 11th. And as of right now, there will be no scheduling changes to the national championship game. But again, with COVID, that is subject to change. We still have this is the 5th, 6 days. So a lot can happen between now and January 11th. Hopefully everybody is healthy. Hopefully, we get a full roster of players going at it for the national championship. That's going to wrap it. Well, give you some real thoughts. There's going to be a very interesting next 15 days as we usher in a new transition of power in regards to the presidency and possibly even the Senate as well, depending on what happens with this House, with this election tonight in Georgia. But I would just encourage everybody, be safe out here. COVID is still out here, in full force. And you're going to have a situation, especially in the DMV, where, you can see some assholes, acting up in certain sections. They're not going. There's certain places in DC they won't go. We know this, and other certain sections across the United States that they won't go, in Philly and Atlanta and Detroit. But they're gonna, you're gonna see some stuff. leading into the inauguration on January 20th. So, be safe out here. And I will see you next time on the next edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Again, the Wire Remix Show podcast. I will keep you updated on that. I'm probably going to have that squared away within the next 2 days in terms of when that podcast will be coming out. As always, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will have this podcast up before the night is over. Have a great rest of the evening. See you next time.